It didn't take too long for the ambulances to reach the hospital. After navigating out of the wooded area, that is. Both Pablo and Austin were taken to a nearby children's hospital, while Alex the pigman was rushed down to a random hospital a few miles away from the said children's hospital, so as to keep him separated from the other two children. Upon getting to the hospital, both Pablo and Austin were rushed out of the ambulance and taken to the emergency room to be patched up and bandaged, while a few FBI agents and detectives, including Detective Maria, followed them to gather evidence, photos, and a few rape kits as well. After a few hours of intensive care, both the young avian and the kangaroo were wheeled into one of the hospital rooms to recover. The DNA evidence was sent over to the forensics lab, along with the rape kits to be tested and used as evidence for the trial that was to come in the near future. Back in the cabin area, multiple forensic team members and agents from numerous county stations investigated the interior and the exterior of the cabin to look for any kind of evidence, to which they wound up finding plenty of enough. There, they found hidden cameras. They also found the dehydrated meat, and inside the main bedroom, they found various pictures of small children plastered around the wall, many of them with X's crossed all over them, and a few with green circles around each face of each child, including the Backyardigans themselves. "Holy shit," one agent muttered under his breath. "I know. My God, what is that smell?" Another agent cried out, holding his nose tightly as to avoid the rancid odor permeating up his nostrils. The first agent that had muttered called in a few other detectives to come into the room to identify the smell coming from the inside of the room that they were in. After looking around the room, they could find nothing rotting or even stagnant coming from any corner of the room. That's when a detective grabbed a crowbar from one of the back of the police vehicles and began hacking away at the chipped wood floorboard where the smell itself was strongest. The detective, after a few minutes of hacking and nearly vomiting, managed to make a decent-sized hole into the floorboard. This caused a huge wave of death and rot to come smashing into their muzzles and up their noses of the FBI agents and detectives, causing most of them to run out of the cabin area and either gagging or vomiting profusely from the stench. The few detectives that hadn't run out of the cabin puking held their button-up shirts to their nostrils and shined their flashlights into the large gaping hole. Bodies. Numerous bodies of children were there. Some still rotting, others fresh, but most of them were already skeletons at this point, piled on top of each other. Many of the bodies that hadn't fully decayed yet were almost unrecognizable. The faces of every one of them still intact, children had been shaven off, leaving nothing but muscle and scar tissue visible. This was about as much as the detectives could take, as they wound up having to call a few people in hazmat suits to come and to collect the bodies. It took almost an hour or two to finally clear the crevice of the hole of the bodies, some body bags being filled to the brim with bones of all shapes and various sizes, all of which were taken to the forensic lab to be identified, and if possible contact the family of said children for funeral arrangements. Once the place had been cleared up, the detectives entered back into the cabin and examined the now empty hole. There, right smack in the middle of the hole, were various ant beds scattered across the place, some still having ants living in them. That would explain the greater amount of bones rather than bodies that had been in the hole itself. Gathering the rest of the evidence that was needed, the cabin was locked shut, and police tape was wrapped all around the property. Back at the hospital, Detective Maria was outside of the room that Pablo and Austin were residing in, waiting for her captain to come and give her word on what needed to be found at the cabin, and the results of the rape kits as well. Almost right if on cue, Captain Ezekiel was making his way down the hallway with a large manila folder in his paws, his eyes fixated on the detective. "Detective Maria?" Captain Ezekiel called out. "Yes, Captain?" Maria answered. Here are the results of the rape kit," Ezekiel said as he handed over the folder. "Thank you, Captain," Maria responded. "You're quite welcome. Honestly, I don't have a whole lot of time to chat. I'm still needed at the station to help get everything settled for the court case, and a bunch of other things too as well, Ezekiel said. That's fine, Captain, Maria said. One thing, though, Ezekiel said. What is it? I'm going to have to ask you to interview both Austin and Pablo later on this week. Their testimonies are necessary for the case. Now, we've already had Pablo's interview, so you don't need to ask him much, just the basics. However, you're going to have to get the entire story from Austin's point of view. That way, we have enough evidence to push this case further. Yes, sir, Maria said. Good. Also, Pablo's mother just came in through the doors. I need you to interview her as soon as you can as well, and see if she has seen any sight of the parents of the other children. What's wrong? Are they missing as well? Maria asked. As far as I know, no. However, we need to be able to find and contact them and break the news to them. I'm putting you in charge of doing this. Oh, and I also have a few officers that will be accompanying you, just in case things get bad. Thank you, Captain. I'll get to it immediately, Maria said. Very good, Detective. Now I must go. Contact me if there's any trouble, okay? Ezekiel said. Maria nodded, and with that, Ezekiel quickly made his way out of the hallway and out of sight. Once he had gone away from sight, Maria turned to the folder in her paws and opened it up to the first page, then to the next, and then to the next. Thankfully for Pablo, his rape kit was clean. Unfortunately for Austin, this wasn't the case. His rape kit was positive, and with almost the same results that Pablo had. According to the kit, Austin had been sodomized about 6 or 7 times, judging by the rectal tearing and the amount of semen, mostly dead, that was present into his rectum. The heavy amount of detail that was present in the file was enough to make the female detective retch from the sight, and wind up closing the folder to keep herself from vomiting. While it was a slight relief that Austin's rape kit hadn't been as damaging as Pablo's, it wasn't still anything to celebrate about. Maria carefully placed the folder under her arm and took in a deep breath to try and calm herself down. Then turning around to the door, Maria opened it slightly and poked her head in to see both Austin and Pablo staring blankly at the television, flipper in hand grasped tightly together, as if the world would ultimately end if it separated for even a moment. Boys? Maria called out calmly. The two instantly broke their 1,000-mile stare and glanced over at Maria. Oh, hey, Detective Maria, what's up? Pablo said. I'm going to be gone for a few minutes, you guys. I need to do a few things. Until then, Pablo, your mother is here. She'll be here to help take care of you guys while I'm gone, Maria said in a soothing, motherly voice. Pablo gave a weak smile and then thanked her, to which Austin did the same. Closing the door softly, Maria began making her way down the hallway and into the main lobby area, where she was greeted by Pablo's mother sitting down in one of the seats, purse in hand. Elizabeth? Maria called out. Oh, thank God you're here, Pablo's mother sobbed as she embraced the detective, to which Maria hugged back. Elizabeth sobbed and moaned both in joy and regret, thankful that her little boy was still alive, as well as Austin too, yet full of guilt for letting that monster take her child away from her for the second time. Thank you for saving my baby, Elizabeth sobbed. You're welcome, Elizabeth. You're very welcome, Maria said. After a few minutes of sobbing, Elizabeth calmed herself down, wiping her eyes, and then took a step back. Elizabeth, I need to ask you a few questions, Maria said, sitting down in one of the main chairs. Anything that you need, dear. I'll be honored to help you out in any way possible, Elizabeth said, blowing her nose. Thank you. Now I must ask, have you had any contact with the parents of the other children at any time during this investigation? Actually, yes. It was during the interview that you had with Pablo a few days back, Maria began. We'd all gathered in one of the rooms, practically dripping with sweat and fear at what had happened to our children. The room itself was filled with nothing but tense feelings, with a few sniffles here and there. I honestly couldn't stay in that room any longer, or else I would have lost my mind from the quietness there. So I got out of there and made my way towards the room where you wind up coming out, and thankfully allowing me to speak with Pablo. Well, to make a long story short, Pablo wound up telling me what had happened. Well, not everything, just what had happened to him and his friends. Once he came back to talk with them, I just went back into the room where everyone was at. They all saw my face, and they knew what had happened to their children. Everyone in the room began breaking down instantly, with one exception. Austin's parents just stood there, shaking like a leaf in autumn. I remember looking at them, and I could see it in their eyes, that their souls were shattered into a million little pieces, and that all hope had left them completely. Then as soon as it had started, Austin's parents both solemnly walked out the door, while we all cried our eyes out. Then one by one, everybody left the room and went home. "Do you know where they're at right now?" Maria asked. "Tyrone, Tasha's, and Uniqua's parents are currently setting up funeral arrangements for their children at, what was the name of the church? St. John's Methodist Church, a few miles away from where we live at. You'll most likely find them there. However, I haven't seen or heard from Austin's parents for the last couple of days or so. They might still be at their home, but that's all I can think of right now," Elizabeth said. "Thank you, Elizabeth. I'll have a couple of officers go and speak with the others about the current situation at hand. I and a few others will go and check up on Austin's parents. They should be relieved that their son is still alive. Oh, and one more thing. What are the names of Austin's parents?" Maria asked. "Their names are David and Macy," Elizabeth responded. "Thank you again. I'll go check on them. As of right now, both Pablo and Austin are in room 324. I'm sure Pablo would love to see you right now," Maria said. "Thank you," Elizabeth said before walking out of the lobby and down the hall where the young boys resided. Maria called over a few police officers that were standing near the entrance of the hospital, to which they walked over to her. "Get the police car ready. I need you both to take me to Austin's home. I have the address saved to my phone, so you won't need to worry about getting lost. I'll be out to meet you both in about 5 minutes or so. There's something that I need to do first," Maria said firmly. The two officers nodded and made their way out of the doors of the hospital and got into their police car. Maria then took out her walkie-talkie and called up a few other officers to go and check up on the parents at the local Methodist church, providing them with the address and zip code of the area. Once she was finished, she walked out the door of the hospital and hopped onto the police car. Within minutes, they were on the road. 30 minutes passed, and after a few rough turns and some detours, the officers and detectives finally made their way into the one-story purple-fenced home of Austin. Detective Maria was the first person to exit out the vehicle, and the other two officers both quickly followed suit. "All right, you two," Maria began. "Keep the questions to a minimum, keep yourself armed at all times, and more importantly, be polite." The two officers nodded in agreement and soon made their way towards the front door of the home. Maria stepped a bit closer to the door and knocked on it a few times. "David? Macy, this is the police," Maria called out. Silence. Maria waited for about a minute longer and then proceeded to knock on the door again. "Please open the door. This is about your son, Austin," Maria called out. Still nothing. "Are you sure they're even home?" one of the officers asked. Maria gave a blank look and then proceeded to point to the large black car that was sitting in the middle of the driveway. "Oh," the officer said, his face turning a light shade of red from embarrassment. "Something isn't right," Maria said as she went and took a look at the front window near the front door. "Look, Maria, it's obvious that they're not going to answer the door, and unless we have a warrant, there's nothing that we can really do," one of the officers said. Maria barely even acknowledged what had been said to her, as she stared intently at the window, trying hard to see through the curtains. The only thing that she could somewhat make out was a faint outline of various furniture and other appliances, but that was about it. Everything else was shrouded in complete and utter darkness. A heavy feeling, like a brick in a sack, immediately hit Maria hard. She knew that there was something wrong, and she needed to find out what it was. However, she knew for an absolute fact that she couldn't just barge into the home without a legal reason to do such. So she ultimately decided to scope out the area. "I want the both of you to go and search the outside of the house for any traces of Austin's parents. Check every door, window, everything, and report back to me if you see anything suspicious. If we can't find anything, then we'll have to leave and come back tomorrow," Maria ordered. The two officers immediately obeyed the order given to them by the detective and began scouting the area, flashlights in hand. One police officer decided to check the fenced backyard of the home and began searching around. Upon making his way to one of the back windows, he spotted something that was honestly very difficult to miss. Blood. A heavy splatter of it coating the window and drapes, nearly turning the orange-colored drapes into a deep crimson-red color. Not wanting to waste time, the officer immediately began to run back towards the front door where Detective Maria was still searching around. "Detective, we got a problem," the officer said. "What is it?" Maria asked. I saw blood. A lot of it on one of the windows. It looks fresh," the officer said. "Shit," Maria said. Call the other officers and have them meet us at the front door. I'll call a bus." "Yes, detective," the officer said, pulling out a walkie-talkie and calling up his crew, as well as an ambulance. Within a few minutes, the other officers arrived at the front door, and with one swift kick, they broke open the door. The room was dark. Not a single ray of sunlight, with the exception of that of the broken door, illuminated the room. However, a large figure could be seen dangling from the ceiling fan. Turning on the lights to the house, they all saw what it was dangling, or rather, who was hanging from the ceiling fan. There, only a few feet away from them, was Austin's mother hanging from a makeshift noose made from various electrical cords and wires. She was clothed in a long blue dress with black flowers draped all around it. Her long frizzled black hair draped over her face, which displayed an expression of hopelessness and depression. Pinned on the bottom of her dress was a small note that read, "The explanation you desire is in the kitchen." "Oh my God," Maria muttered under her breath, her mind still in shock at what was in front of her. Taking a large knife from the belt, she carefully cut the wires with one single stroke, carefully holding the body as to make sure it didn't fall to the ground. With some assistance from the other cops, they laid the lifeless and stiff body onto the couch. Once it had been finished, Maria took a deep breath of air, but soon started gagging. It was very faint, but there was a scent of something rotten and decaying coming from some part of the house. Without hesitation, all three officers began to slowly inch their way down one of the halls, the stench itself growing stronger and stronger with each passing moment, signaling that they were close to the source of the scent. Finally, they reached a door that was at the very end of the hallway and began turning the knob carefully. Then, as they opened the door to the room, a tidal wave of rot punched them all in the face, and hard. Everyone soon began to gag, and even one officer ran off into a bathroom and vomited into the toilet. Maria just covered her face with a handkerchief and shined her light into the room. The room itself wasn't very big to begin with. It looked more like a simple office room than anything. However, the walls and furniture of the room were covered in giant splots of crimson red blood, small bits of flesh and bone sticking from the blood-soaked wall like a macabre art piece. Shining the light a little bit more on the right of the room revealed Austin's father, a double-barreled shotgun resting on his blood-soaked chest and collar-plaid shirt. His head, at least the top part of it, was gone, only being replaced with a heavy splatter of blood, brain matter, chunks of flesh, teeth, and an eyeball covering the wall and window behind him. His bottom jaw below being the only thing left intact. Flies, maggots, and other insects crawled in and out of the destroyed head. Maria closed her eyes and stepped forward to the dead body, trying not to expel what little food she had consumed throughout the day. She then opened her eyes and found a note pinned to the body that wasn't saturated with blood and meat. Also in one of the hands was a small family portrait of Austin, the father that was there, and the mother, all standing in front of the house with big smiles on their faces. She grabbed the note and opened it up. Written on it was the same message that was found on Austin's mother's body as well. However, this message seemed to be a bit more rushed and almost illegible. The explanation you desire is in the kitchen. Maria placed the note into her pocket and walked out of the room as quickly as she could. Once she got back to the living room, she could already hear the sound of the ambulances driving down the street. She knew for a fact that it wouldn't be long before they arrived, so she quickly went into the kitchen and found a small stack of papers on top of the kitchen table. This must have been the explanation that was on the notes. "Oh dear God, how am I going to tell Austin?" Maria muttered under her breath. Just as she was about to place the papers down on the surface of the table, the ambulance that she thought was coming down for them just continued driving down the road. It must have been another ambulance that had been called in for another emergency. Maria just sighed and sat down in the empty chair next to the stack of papers on the table. Without much thought, she carefully grabbed the papers and began reading it. It was Austin's parents' suicide note. "To whom it may concern, I don't really have much to say, and neither does my husband David. In fact, as I'm currently writing this note, he's already prepped a shotgun for himself. I would have had him sit down with me and write out a few words that he may have wanted to say, but he's already too weak to even say anything. He only wants to be done and over with this so that he, or we for that matter, can be with our little angel in heaven. Now I know what you're all thinking, and we already know what it is. Our lives mean so much. Taking them would only keep us from enjoying the rest of our lives, yada yada yada. Well, I hate to break it to everyone, but that's not what we want at all. No. Not one bit. This may sound a bit confusing for some of you, so I'll just shut up and explain. Me nor my husband have ever told anyone this, due to the heavy amount of shame that it would have brought upon us and our family, but I guess that really doesn't matter that much right now. My husband and I had gotten married at a very early age, 15 and 16 respectively. It wasn't really because we loved each other, at least not at first. It was more because of the fact that we were extremely rebellious teenagers. We only got married because we wanted to be officially emancipated from our parents, which, because of our insanity, we got rather easily. For the next 5.5 years, we did the most depraved things that you could think of. We got drunk daily, we used a heavy amount of drugs, oftentimes mixing with alcohol so that we could get a bigger hit. Plus, we also involved ourselves in numerous sexual parties where we would have sex with multiple men and women at clubs, bars, wherever the heck we wanted to go to. We almost OD'd about 3 or 4 times during the period of the 5 years because of the heavy drug use we were involved in. Now, I never really worried too much about getting pregnant, because I had some kind of rare condition where I was barren at birth or something like that. In a nutshell, it just means that I can't have any kids, which was a good thing for me and my husband at the time, because that would just mean our fun would be taken away from us if I had gotten pregnant. I know. It was disgustingly selfish for the both of us to even so much as think that way, but we did. Now, despite my barrenness, my husband always made me take some kind of morning after pill to take right after a night of sex and drugs. Years passed, and we continued to wreak our lives up in many different ways. 5 whole years passed, and it was at that point we were both broke, hungry, living in a crappy motel just to have a roof over our heads. All the money that we earned, or in this case stolen, from going to repeat parties it will always wind up going to buying LSD and other hallucinogenics. Then after taking a few hits of LSD, both my husband and I just went at it. The next few days went by without anything abnormal happening until the 5th or 6th day, I started to get morning sickness. I just chalked it up to my body being sick again from the drugs, but after a few more days, the sickness didn't go away. It worried me, and I had remembered that I had forgotten to take the morning after pill that my husband had given me, so I ran into the bathroom and was about to take the few of the pills when something happened. I just couldn't take the pills. It was as if someone was holding me back, trying to prevent me from taking them. The next thing I knew, I was dumping all the pills down the toilet, And once the last pill was out of the bottle, I flushed the toilet. The next few days went by with the same plights of morning sickness, which I knew wasn't from the drugs. So one afternoon I went to the dollar store and bought a few things for my stomach, and as I was about to leave, I found a few pregnancy tests. Now, I don't know why I even bought them, but for some reason I just wanted to make sure. When I got back to the motel room, I took a few aspirins and decided to take up the pregnancy test. And turns out, it was positive. I used at least about 6 more pregnancy tests on myself, and every one of them came out positive. I told my husband David, and shockingly enough, he was overjoyed. It was at that moment that we decided to pick ourselves up and better our lives. We both enrolled ourselves into rehab and went on a few detox while we were both there. We spent about 3.5 months in there and then at a halfway house, slowly but surely getting better and better. And every time either of us wanted to quit and just give up, our little angel would kick in my stomach as if to remind us why we were there to begin with. Then came the day that our little saint was to be born. Now, the only thing that the two of us were worried about was if the drugs and alcohol that I had taken all those years would affect the baby. We didn't know if the baby was going to be mentally or physically handicapped because of it. But thank the good Lord above, we were wrong. When Austin came out of my womb for the first time, he was perfect in every way. The doctors themselves were even puzzled at the fact that our baby was as healthy as he was. But the facts themselves showed them the proof. Austin was of a normal, albeit a bit chunky weight. He was tested and clean of all substances. And, as a bonus, he didn't even cry when he came out of my womb for the first time. He took one look at us and smiled. Needless to say, both my husband and I were bawling our eyes out when we held Austin for the first time ever. Life after that just continued to get better and better for us all. My husband managed to land a high-paying job, and we were both completely clean of all drugs and alcohol, and vowed never to even touch a single drop of it ever again. And we even wind up buying this house for us to live in. None of this would have been possible if it wasn't for our little angel, our little heavenly saint, Austin. He was never a problem when he was an infant. He rarely cried, always smiled, and was very smart. Heck, he said his first word when he was only a year old. When he turned 4, he started kindergarten too. Normally kids don't start kindergarten until they turn 6. We later found out, after the school gave him some sort of test, that our little Austin was a prodigy. Oh, when we found that out, we just cried our eyes out with joy. We didn't deserve Austin in any shape or form because of how disgusting we were in the past. But he was our blessing sent from heaven above. When he started hanging out with the other kids, he was definitely shy at first, but soon he was outside almost every day until school started. We had many memories that we cherish and love. Sadly, we'll never get to experience any of those things again. You all must understand that we've tried to work it out after we found that Austin was gone, but we just can't. And the last thing that we want is for our little angel to look down at us from heaven above and be disappointed at the way that we were living. Austin was our glue that held both me and my husband together. He was the reason why we bettered our lives, but most importantly, we've learned more from him than he's learned from us. We're sorry if this hurts anyone, but understand me when I say that we're better off dead than alive. I know for a full-on fact that if we continue to live, we'll just go back to using drugs again, and we're not going to let that happen. Austin, sweetie, we're coming home. You won't be alone for any longer in heaven. Mommy and Daddy are coming home, and we'll be one big happy family again. We love you, sweetie. We love you. Goodbye. Tears poured down Maria's face as she read the last sentence that was on the letter, her mind going into various directions. Soon she was taken out of the trance when an ambulance worker and a coroner tapped her on her shoulder. "Detective Maria?" The coroner, a gray female bear, said. Maria jumped a bit, gripping tightly onto the suicide note in her paws. "Oh my... Oh, sorry. I guess I spaced out for a little bit," Maria said, trying to form a proper explanation. "It's fine," the coroner said. "I just need you to take me to the other body, if you please. My assistant over there is already handling the other one. Oh, and here, you're gonna need this," the coroner said as she handed Maria a small mask to block out the scent. "Oh, alright then. Thank you," Maria said, leading the coroner to the back room where the almost headless father of the young kangaroo rested, the flies and the maggots still feasting upon its flesh undisturbed. The door was opened, and the smell of rotten meat and death seemed even stronger than the second time around. However, this didn't seem to bother the coroner at all. In fact, she barely even flinched. "After breathing in all the smell of decay and death and stuff for 10 years of my life, you get used to the smell quickly," the coroner said with a smile, although be it a goofy one, which wasn't very appropriate given the current situation at hand. Maria just held the mask closer to her face as she struggled to keep herself from gagging again, not just from the smell, but from the heavy amount of gore splattered all over the place. "How long has he been dead for?" Maria questioned, her eyes still locked into the corpse just a few feet away from her. "Judging by the state of decomposition he's in, I'd have to say about 2 or 3 days at most," the coroner said, examining the body. "Cause of death?" Maria asked. The coroner turned to Maria with a look that said, "Seriously?" Maria just bit her lip, realizing the stupidity of her question. "Well, I mean, it's kinda obvious, isn't it?" the coroner said, rather matter-of-factly. "But if you must know, shotgun blast in the mouth through the head. Judging by the mess, I'd even say the shotgun itself was a double-barrel shotgun." "Okay, so, what about the..." Just as Maria was about to ask her question, her cell phone began ringing, or, in this case, vibrating. "Hello?" Maria asked.
"What the hell is going on? I just got a phone call from one of the officers I sent you with telling me that they saw blood all over the window of the house. Is everyone there all right?"
Maria let out a soft sigh, unsure of herself and how in the world she was going to break the news to the captain. "Well, they're dead," Maria stuttered.
"What?"
"We found both Austin's mother and father dead. They both killed themselves."
"How did they die?"
"Macy hung herself and David shot himself with a shotgun," Maria said. There was a long, deafening silence before Ezekiel spoke again.
"I see. Did they leave a note?"
Yeah, a very long one," Maria said.
"Okay. Here's what I'm gonna need you to do now, Maria. I need you to go back to the hospital and interview Austin, get his side of the story about what happened at the cabin. We've also have enough evidence to arrest Alex on what he did to those kids. As for the mess, I'm already sure that there are plenty of people there to fix up, all of that. Oh, and one more thing. Don't tell Austin what happened here. Not now. He's already going through enough shit as it is with his injuries and everything. Just don't tell him unless he's ready."
Yes, Chief.
"Okay. Alright. Good. Okay. Goodbye."
Putting the phone back into her pocket, Maria made her way outside of the home and got back into the police car, but not before telling the other officers that came with her that she was going back to the hospital. Once she got there, she made her way towards the lobby area and was met by Pablo's mother. "Oh, good, you're back," Elizabeth said. "How did the interview go?" Maria bit her lip and stepped back a little bit. "What's wrong?" Elizabeth asked, concerned. "Is there a private place that we can talk at?" Maria asked. Sure, there's a small chapel here if you want to go there if you want, Elizabeth said as she pointed to a large chapel door near the lobby area. Good. Let's go. We've got a lot to talk about, Maria said as she and Elizabeth walked over towards the chapel area. Maria was the first one to walk into the area. The flickering candles, votive lights, and painted icons filled the area with a peaceful yet ominous feeling. Checking to make sure that the area was empty, both Maria and Elizabeth took their seat in one of the pews near the icons in front of the chapel. You asked me earlier about the interview with Austin's parents. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to contact them, Maria began. Why is that? Weren't they home? The female avian said. No, you see, we wound up having to burst into the house after we saw some rather disconcerting things on one of the windows. However, once we busted in, we found Austin's mother hanging from the ceiling fan. Elizabeth's eyes and beak widened in shock at the very words that were coming from Maria's mouth. However, that wasn't all of it. We also found Austin's father in the back room of the house. I won't go into any gory details with you, because honestly, you'll get really sick hearing it, but to put it bluntly, he shot himself in the head. Oh my God, Elizabeth said in a state of shock and depression. How long were they? 2 days, Maria said flatly. Why, oh my gosh, Austin's gonna be so devastated, Elizabeth said. I know. However, I'm gonna have to ask you to not mention his parents' suicide. At least not right now. He's already going through the aftermath of that horrible tragedy at the cabin with that fucking pig guy, Maria said firmly. Elizabeth nodded her head, agreeing to keep her beak shut for the time being. The female avian then proceeded to grab a handkerchief from her purse and wipe the tears from her eyes. She had known Austin and his family for a long, long time. In fact, she even considered Austin and the others her family as well. Not by bloodline, of course, but just getting to know and grow with them as well. What's gonna happen to Austin now that his parents are dead? Elizabeth asked as she held back a sob. Normally I would say foster care, but honestly I don't trust those places in any shape or form. Too many children being sent off to random people that they don't even know. So I have another solution to this situation, Maria said. What is it? Elizabeth asked. In order to keep him out of the foster care system, I need you to adopt Austin. It'll require a few things, but I'm quite sure that it wouldn't be an issue, will it? Maria said. It shouldn't be an issue. And after all that he's done for my little Pablo? Yeah. I will certainly adopt him, Elizabeth said. Thank you, Elizabeth, Maria said with a small smile. Now, I need to go and interview Austin and get his side of the story, Maria said, getting up from the pew. I might have access to Pablo as well, so in the meantime, go on ahead and set up the adoption process. I'll get to it immediately, Elizabeth said. And with that, Elizabeth made her way out of the chapel door. Maria, on the other hand, just stayed where she was at, still trying to ready herself for what was to come. She knew for a fact that she'd have to break the news to Austin sooner or later, and she knew that it was going to hurt him in ways that even she didn't want to know. One thing that she did before leaving the chapel was make the mental note in her head to put Austin on suicide watch if necessary. If anything, even if the slightest feelings that he was going to harm himself were to come up, she had to be ready. Upon reaching the door to the chapel, she dipped her fingers in a little holy water font and blessed herself. She was going to need as much strength as she could get. A few miles away from the children's hospital, was the hospital where the pigman, aka Alex, was currently staying at. He was, at the moment, completely comatose. He had been that way for the past few hours after surgery, which took some time to complete due to the fact that the bullet had been lodged deep into Alex's spine. However, despite all of that, the doctors were successful in getting it out and ultimately preventing Alex's death. However, He certainly wasn't getting out of this scot-free. While the surgery was successful, Alex was permanently paralyzed from the waist down. He would never be able to walk ever again. Which may have been a bit of karma coming to bite him in the ass for all the shit he had done. But of course, there was much more to come. As Alex was resting in the hospital bed, the chief of the police, Ezekiel, was coming to pay that fat fuck a little visit, and have him arrested right on the spot. Upon getting an arrest warrant from the judge, Ezekiel and a few other detectives were already making their way towards the hospital room. It didn't take long, as the ride itself to get to the hospital was about a mile or so away from the children's hospital. Upon arrival, Ezekiel and the other detectives got out of their squad car and made their way into the hospital. Having shown their warrant for Alex's arrest, one nurse guided them towards the room that he was staying in. "This is it. Room 54, the female nurse said. "Good," Ezekiel said with a long, sly grin on his face. The nurse then left the corridor, and the officers opened up the door to the room. There they saw his unconscious body lying there in the bed, with the IV sticking out from his fat, greasy wrist. Ezekiel wanted nothing else more than to wait for this asshole to wake up, so that he could slip those handcuffs onto the fat pig's wrist, and tightly too, so that it would cause pain. In fact, he wanted to make sure that he made Alex's life a living hell. At least as legally as he was able to. He dreamed of nothing more than stuffing that disgusting lard ass into the deepest, darkest cell that he could find, feeding him only bread and water for every meal, and, if lucky, maybe get to beat the shit out of the guy a few times. Yeah, he was a bit of a sadist, but could you blame him? Right there in front of them was a mass pedophile, rapist, cannibal piece of dog shit. If anything, he would have already blown the brains out of that bastard if he could. But he knew better. He was going to make sure that both Pablo and Austin, their friends, as well as the countless children that had been found in that cabin, got the justice they deserved. And if that meant keeping this fucker alive for a little while longer, so be it. Ezekiel just took a seat near the bed, anticipating the moment when Alex would wake up. He wanted to be the first thing that bastard saw when he woke up. They waited for some time. Seconds became minutes. Minutes became hours. Hours turned into nothingness. Not a single sound or even a grunt came from Alex's dirty mouth. It was a bit disconcerting for the police chief, as he was afraid that Alex was in a permanent coma of some sort, which would only delay justice longer than it honestly should have been. Then, after waiting for at least 3 hours in total, Alex moaned and shook his head softly. Ezekiel stood up from the chair and leaned in close to the pig's face, a sadistic smile stretching from corner to corner on his face. Soon the pig's eyes began to flutter open, and both his eyes immediately shot open when he saw who was in front of him. What the fuck are you doing here?" Alex spat as he stared intently at the sadistic smile on the captain's face. "Well, it's certainly not here to give you a bouquet of flowers and a get-well-soon balloon, that's for sure," Ezekiel snapped. Alex just glared at the officer in front of him. "I don't need your sarcastic bullshit," Alex hissed. "Just wait until I get my hands on those little Alex stopped dead in his tracks. He began struggling, attempting to move his legs in one way or another. However, they remained as limp as a wet noodle. He soon began to panic. What the fuck?" Alex screamed. "Why the fuck can I not move my legs?" Alex giggled a bit at the plight the pig was going through, but that was just the icing on top of the cake. "The bullet had hit you? It jammed itself deep into your spine, damaging your nervous system in the process. To put it bluntly, you're paralyzed from the waist down. Permanently." Ezekiel laughed, a hint of glee present in his voice. "I swear to God I'm going to wring that little kangaroo's neck when I find him!" Alex roared with rage. "No, you're not. In fact, before I forget," Captain Ezekiel proceeded to grab the handcuffs from the belt and swing them around like a toy. "Alex J. Byrne, You are under arrest for murder in first degree, kidnapping, endangering the welfare of a child, cannibalism, rape of a minor, sexual assault of a minor, child pornography, theft, poisoning, so on, so forth, yada yada yada. I think you get it. With that said, Ezekiel grabbed the wrist of the now frozen pigman and cuffed him to his bedside. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or do can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided to you. Do you understand the rights that I have just described to you? As a response, Alex spat into the officer's face, the slimy glop of spit going down the chief's face at a slow rate. However, this didn't even soften the sadistic smile that was still plastered on Ezekiel's face. I'll take that as a yes. Oh, and I'm also arresting you for attempted murder as well, seeing as you have a multitude of STDs and AIDS as well, Ezekiel sneered. Alex just stared at the chief as he tightened the cuffs around the fat pig's wrist. The only thing going through his mind at the time was how much he wanted to make those little kids suffer at his hands. He made sure of it that if he was going down, he would certainly bring those two brats down with him. Back at the children's hospital, Maria had taken some time making sure of it that Pablo and Austin were as comfortable as possible. She originally was planning on interviewing the both of them that very day, but seeing as how the two of them had been subjected to multiple tests, shots, and other medical procedures of the case, she ultimately decided to do it on another day, which really wasn't a problem for her, because Ezekiel had told her to interview the two before the end of the week, so she didn't have to particularly do it now. So she ultimately decided to just relax with the two for the whole day, which she needed as much as ever, mostly because of the insane shit that she had seen throughout the day. The day itself went by without any kind of issues. They played games together, watched a few movies on the hospital television, and pretty much had dinner to wrap the rest of the day up. Thanks for hanging out with us, Austin said, yawning. Yeah, it was great, Pablo chimed in. You two are quite welcome. It was fun being with you two. Now, you guys go on ahead and get some rest. We've got a busy day tomorrow morning, Maria said softly as she walked towards the door and opened it. Good night, Detective Maria, Austin said. Oh, if you see my mom, tell her I said good night to her, Pablo said. I'll make sure of it, Maria said with a smile. Oh, and if you see my parents too, let them know I love them, Austin said. Maria stopped dead in her tracks, her smile fading for a bit before returning. She looked over at Austin, a sad smile on her face. She nodded her head, and Austin gave a big smile and then curled up into the covers of the hospital bed, and then soon fell asleep. Closing the door ever so gently, Maria slowly walked down the hospital hallways, her face plastered with uncontainable sadness. She knew that tomorrow had to be the day that she would break the news to Austin, and if anything, she knew it wasn't going to be pleasant. The very next day, Maria had woken up earlier than she usually did. She got up, got dressed, cleaned herself up, made herself some coffee, and was out the door. She then drove herself down towards the children's hospital. The only thing playing in her head were the words that Austin had said before she had left yesterday night. Tell my parents that I love them. Over and over did that phrase play in her head like a broken record. Upon reaching the hospital building, she grabbed the files, notes, and the voice recorder that were sitting in the passenger seat of the car and got out of it. There she made her way to the hospital and walked towards the hospital room of Pablo and Austin and knocked gently. Come in, Austin's voice called out. Maria's heart sunk to the bottom of her stomach, but she quickly took a few breaths and put on a smile. Opening the door slowly, she poked her head into the room to see Austin relaxing in the bed, with the television remote clicking away at his hand. Maria looked to where Pablo should have been at, but he and his bed were absent from the room. Austin, sweetie? Where's Pablo at? Maria asked as she walked into the room, closing the door behind her. It was a bad night for Pablo, Austin said, his ears drooping. How was that? Maria asked, concerned. He kept waking up in the middle of the night screaming. He just couldn't stop screaming. I managed to calm him down the first 2 times, but the third was the worst out of all of them. He started yelling, crying and screaming like a madman. He even started trying to hurt himself. All the while he kept on screaming, "Let me go! Let me go!" The doctors wound up rushing into the room and having to sedate him for a bit. Then for my safety they wheeled Pablo into a separate room to rest and recover. As of now, he's having some tests run on him by the doctors, Austin said timidly. I see, Maria said. Yeah, if anything, I'm surprised that I haven't started losing it myself. Heck, I was in that cabin longer than he was, and I'm younger than he is, Austin said, pointing to himself. Well, if anything, Austin, it's a blessing that you managed to control it a lot better than Pablo did, Maria said. True, Austin said. Speaking of the cabin, I need to interview about what happened when you were there. Your testimony is going to be a big help for us when the trial begins, Maria said, grabbing a chair and sitting it down. Anything to get that pig monster locked up forever, Austin growled. Maria nodded in agreement and then began setting up the voice recorder. Once that was done, she then placed the device next to Austin's bed so that everything could be heard. Okay, Austin, everything's ready. However, my question to you is, are you ready? Maria asked. You bet I am, Austin said calmly. Good. Now, the first thing I need to ask of you is to tell me what happened when you were first in the cabin, Maria said. Austin gritted his teeth and swallowed the lump that was forming in his throat. He took a few deep breaths and spoke. When I woke up for the first time in that cabin, I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't see or hear anything, and it was very hard for me to breathe. I also couldn't move my arms either. In fact, they were both chained together. My entire body was suspended in mid-air due to the fact that I couldn't feel the ground beneath my feet, Austin began. During that time, did you feel any kind of pain? Maria asked as she jotted down a few notes. I guess I might have been hanging there for quite some time because I couldn't even feel my arms after I woke up. The only thing that I could feel were the chains around my wrist, Austin said. I see. What happened once the bag was lifted off your head? Maria asked. I saw blood. Blood everywhere, Austin gagged. I remember turning to Tasha and seeing her lower jaw gone. Then I turned to Uniqua and her face was like a grilled cheese sandwich. As the memories of these events continued to fill the young kangaroo's head, Austin began upchucking like crazy. Maria knew what was about to happen, so she quickly handed Austin a trash can and had him vomit into it. A few moments of upchucking, Austin placed the bile-filled trash can down on the floor and continued with his account. Sorry about that. Anyway, after seeing all of that, the pigman snapped me out of my trance by placing a knife near my throat. I was afraid that he was going to hurt me until Pablo screamed at the man to stop. Austin stopped, tears beginning to form in his eyes. Pablo begged him not to hurt me. He agreed, but he made Pablo do things to him. What exactly did he make Pablo do? Maria asked. He started touching Pablo and kissing him all over his body and then his beak. Then he put that ball gag back into Pablo's mouth so that he couldn't scream. He then put his disgusting fingers deep into Pablo's private areas. Austin stopped once again, not wanting to go on with the details. However, if that sick fuck was going to get what was coming to him, he knew that he had to continue on. Then the pigman started pulling his pants down and grabbed his thing. He wound up rubbing something on it. I didn't know what it was. He then put himself inside of Pablo's private areas. I could tell that Pablo had to use every ounce of willpower not to scream. After a while, blood started coming out of Pablo's frontal area. Then the pigman pulled himself out of Pablo's front end and put it in his bottom. Austin began shaking, trying to purge himself from the vile memories of his best friend and lover having to be subjected to the brutal assault and rape. This kept going on for a few minutes until he apparently finished. Then he pulled up his pants and started complimenting Pablo on how he was a good boy. Austin spat in anger after saying that last line, good boy. What did he do next? Maria asked. After he was done with Pablo, he then went up to me.
And now, it's time for you to be next.
The pigman squealed as he unlatched the chains from the ceiling area. Austin soon began kicking and screaming underneath the duct tape mouth, which did nothing to stop the pigman's work that he was doing. However, before Alex could do anything else, he stopped dead in his tracks and turned around.
Oh, don't worry, Pablo. I'm gonna keep my promise,
the fat pig giggled.
But that doesn't mean he won't be of use to me, though.
And with that, he dragged the screaming kangaroo deep into his bedroom, shut the door, and locked it. The interior of the bedroom area was one that would have resembled a morbid art piece. The walls were covered in various pictures of small children, some with red X's scratched around them, and others with green circles around the faces of a few children.
Welcome to my humble abode, Austin,
the pigman called out in a surprisingly joyous way. Austin just shook with fear as he saw the macrame work that the pigman had so carefully planned out in his wall. Then, without warning, Austin was dropped to the floor with a heavy thud. He would have thought that he was in some serious pain, but on the contrary, it was a major relief on his arms. Slowly but surely the feeling in his arms returned. However, it was only a temporary relief. Austin's hands were still shackled together. Alex grabbed the chains that held Austin in place and dragged him onto an old, musty mattress with a stained pillow and blanket resting on top of it.
You'll stay here until I'm done with you,
the pigman said.
Until then, you stay put. After all the fun that I've had with your little faggot boyfriend, I'm gonna take a little nap.
Alex then walked over towards the plump, lumpy mattress that was almost on par with the amount of filthiness as the other mattress that Austin. I didn't really sleep that much at night. In fact, I just leaned my head against the wall, hoping to find some kind of sound that would have helped soothe me a little bit, but of course, there was nothing, Austin said, still shaking. You're doing very well, Austin. I promise you that this won't last too much longer, Maria said, checking the recorder. It's fine, Austin said flatly. So what happened next? Maria asked. I don't really know. I wound up dozing off for about an hour or so until the pigman came bursting through the door of the room, screaming his head off, like somebody who had just gotten stabbed was on, and within a few minutes the sick bastard was snoring away. The sound of heavy, fast-paced footsteps echoed throughout the entire cabin area, with a heavy boom at each step, the sound of which caused Austin to bolt up from his sleep, wide awake and worried.
Oh my fucking gosh!
The pigman screamed as he barged into the room, turning the lights on in the process.
That little fucker escaped!
He said, as he threw various items across the room in a rage-filled tantrum. Austin just hid in his dirty bed. He was glad that his friend had escaped, but at the same time worried about the safety and well-being of him as well. As he continued to watch the pigman throw a few things around like a toddler, he noticed he had grabbed a shotgun from behind the worn-out nightstand that sat next to the bed. Austin's eyes widened with fear, as he knew for a fact what that monster had in store for Pablo. And one thing was for certain, was that Pablo most likely hadn't gone far in his escape, due to the recent sodomy that he had gone through from the pigman. "You can't do this!" Austin screamed as he ripped the tape off from his mouth. The pigman didn't move around. However, he did acknowledge Austin's remark.
"Why should I?"
The pigman spat. "Please don't hurt him," Austin said, beginning to break down. "I'll do anything." It was at that time that Alex had finally stopped dead in his tracks, and he turned his head towards the sniffling kangaroo. He gave a small smirk and then proceeded to place the shotgun next to the corner of the doorway. He then walked over towards Austin and bent down to the young marsupial's face. "You'll do anything?" the pigman said, licking his lips to moisten them. Austin hesitated for a moment and then said, "Yes." "What are you gonna give me to keep me from killing that little penguin friend of yours?" the pigman asked. Whatever you want," Austin said timidly. "That's what I wanted to hear." Without another word being spoken, Austin found himself being lifted up once again onto the air by his wrist. The searing pain that rocketed down his arms to his lower back were hell for him. However, that pain only lasted for a moment, before he was plopped down into the pigman's bed, which is a little bit more comfortable, although not by much. The pigman then unshackled one of the chains from Austin's wrist and connected the other one to the bars of the bed. Then the pigman made his way towards the same nightstand that he had went by to get the shotgun, and opened up one of the drawers. After a few seconds of rummaging around, the pigman pulled out a large metal collar with a chain at the end of it, a long one. He then walked back over towards Austin and placed the collar around Austin's neck, latching the end part of the chain into one of the loops of the bed. "Here's how it's gonna go, Austin," the pigman said with a sadistic grin. "I won't go and kill your little friend. He's most likely dead anyway. So, you're going to just sit there and do the same thing that your little friend did with me. You're now going to be my little plaything. If you do a good job, I won't kill you or your little boyfriend. Got it?" Austin began shaking again, this time more violently than the last. He then took a breath of air and nodded his head in agreement. Alex cocked his head and the grin expanded to a nightmarish level. "Good. You know, Austin, where your little friend really stressed me out," Alex said as he began to slowly undress down to his underwear. He then walked towards the side of the bed and lied down upon it in a seductive manner. Austin just closed his eyes, not wanting to see the pig's scepter and jewels sticking out from the loincloth that he was wearing. "You'll help me de-stress, won't you?" Alex said, pulling Austin closer to him. "Yes," Austin whimpered. "Good." He began taking off my clothes one by one, and then began to remove my underwear. Austin cringed deeply as he shut his eyes tight at having to remember that unfortunate memory. He did things to me that I didn't think were even possible. He also put himself in my bottom, and the pain was so bad that I wound up passing out. "Do you want to take a break, Austin?" Maria asked, concerned. "No," Austin said, shaking his head furiously. "I want everyone in that courtroom to know what that bastard did to me." Maria just sat down in her chair and continued to listen to Austin. When I finally woke up, he had already finished. My bottom hurt really, really badly. I could barely move my legs at all. For the next 3 days, it was all the same. Wake up, violate me, feed me a bunch of jerky, and then violate me once again. Despite the pain and the fear that I had, I started to come up with a plan to try and get rid of him. "What was the plan?" Maria asked. "The plan was to choke him out during his sleep. However, after he had kidnapped Pablo for the second time, I decided to do it while me and Pablo were together. Let me tell you, it worked, but unfortunately he didn't die. He then attacked me and Pablo one last time and slammed me against a mirror in the side table drawer. There I found one of his guns, and I cocked it, and I shot him in his back. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Austin, for telling me everything that happened. This is really going to help us. Your plus Pablo's testimonies here on the recorder are definitely going to convict that pigman," Maria said with a smile. "Can I ask you a question, Detective Maria?" Austin asked. "Sure thing, Austin. anything, Maria responded. Is that pigman dead? Austin said with a heavy amount of hate in the tone of his voice. I'm afraid not, Austin, Maria said. He didn't die from the gunshot wound, but he is paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of his life, from what I've heard, Maria said. Well, okay. At least he's suffering. That's what I like to see. At least with him, that is, Austin said with a grin forming on his face. Same here, Austin. I promise you that we'll make sure that monster is taken care of for good, Maria said. Thank you. There was a period of silence for a moment between the two until Austin spoke up. Detective Maria, how are my parents doing? Maria froze up. She didn't want to have to tell Austin the bad news, but she really didn't have much of a choice in the situation. Sure, she could lie, but she knew that if she did that, it would only make things a lot worse for her. She took in a deep breath and looked at Austin with a saddened look on her face which made Austin confused. What's wrong? Austin asked. Austin, sweetie, I need to tell you something, Maria said softly. What is it? Austin asked. Maria gulped and prepared herself for the worst. You see, Austin, yesterday me and a few police officers went over to your home to interview your parents. They didn't answer the door, and so we had to scout out the area to check if everything was okay. And then we saw something in the window that concerned us, so we busted through the door and we wind up finding your mother. Austin's eyes began watering. He already knew what she was about to say. It didn't take a prodigy like him to figure it out. Maria noticed this and started to tear up a bit herself. I'm so sorry, Austin. Your parents are gone, Maria said sadly. In that instant, something inside Austin cracked. His body shook violently. Tears were already flowing down his face, and his lip quivered as he silently sobbed. Maria immediately wrapped her arms around Austin and caressed him in a soft hug, rubbing his back to try and calm the now weeping kangaroo that was huddled against her. No words were said, as neither of them could say anything at that point. After a few minutes, Maria let go of Austin and looked at him with pity. Who's gonna take care of me now? Austin said in between sobs. As of now, Austin, Pablo's mother has happily agreed to take you in. She's getting the adoption papers ready as we speak, Maria said. Okay. How did they die? Austin asked. Your mother hung herself, and your father shot himself, Maria said with great hesitation in her voice. Austin said nothing, but continued to cry for his now-deceased parents. If you want, Austin, I can give you some time alone if you want, Maria asked. Sure. Just promise me one thing that you'll go get Pablo. I need him really badly right now. Austin sniffled. I'll go go and get him, Austin. You've had enough to deal with today, so I'll just let you rest for the rest of the day, okay? Maria said calmly. Okay, Austin said quietly. Maria nodded and then started heading out of the door, the recorder and all the other items packed up and ready to go. Just as Maria was about to exit the doorway, Austin called out to her. Detective? Yes, Austin? Maria said. When you see that pigman, Austin lifted up his head, showing a face full of wrath and anger. Do me a favor and make his life hell. I'll do that for you, Austin, Maria said as she closed the door to the room. Maria took in a deep breath. The reaction was just as she expected, but thankfully, it wasn't too bad. Now that all of that was unfortunately out of the way, she now had the testimony of Austin, which would then be added to the evidence to convict that fucked up pegman. However, before she decided to leave the hospital to go and turn in the evidence, she made her way towards one of the nurses in the hallway and asked about Pablo. The nurse cocked his head a bit at this, but after a little description given to him by Maria, he quickly recognized him. There, he took the detective to a room in the far end of the hallway and opened up a small window to the door and allowed Maria to look in. "Do you know how long he's going to be in there for?" Maria asked the male nurse. "From what I've been told by the doctors, he should be back in his room in the next hour or so. However, we're going to have to give him some medication to relax him during the night so that he doesn't have any more night terrors," the nurse said, flipping through the pages on his clipboard. "Could I talk with him a bit? It's needed for a case," Maria asked. I'm not really 100% sure if I'm allowed to do that, Detective. However, I can talk with the nurse was quickly cut off by the sound of Maria's cell phone going off. "I'm sorry, it's my boss again," Maria said as she grabbed her cell phone and answered the call. "That's fine. I'll be over in the next room if you need me," the nurse said as he turned away and walked into the other patient's room. "Hello?" Maria asked.
Detective, did you manage to get Austin's side of the story?
"Yes, Captain."
Good. Did you tell Austin?
"He didn't take it well," Maria said as a matter of factly.
Poor kid. I had a feeling he wouldn't take it well.
"Yeah, he just needs some time to recover."
God, I can't imagine how much pain he must be in right now. First he gets kidnapped by that fat bastard, next he gets raped over and over again. Now his parents are dead? I mean, what? Fuck me.
As of right now, Chief, Pablo's mother's in the process of getting the adoption papers ready for Austin, so at least he won't have to suffer through the frickin' foster care system.
Good. Now, Detective, since you've already gotten the interview that we need, go on ahead and get back to the station.
"But sir, what about Pablo's interview?"
The testimony that Pablo gave with you at the station is enough. Besides, Austin's account should pretty much match everything up.
"Has anybody else found out the evidence at the cabin?"
Yes. In fact, after searching around the main bedroom of the cabin, we found a camcorder and a few tapes in a large wooden box. Yeah. And we found some rather disgusting content on it. I'd rather not go into it as of right now. I mean, it's just best for you to come to the station and view it yourself.
"Okay, sir. Another question. Has Alex Burns been detained?"
Oh, he's being detained, all right. He's with us right now in one of the interrogation rooms. I'm gonna make sure to warm him up for you.
"Are we going to interrogate him anytime soon?" Maria asked.
As of right now, no. He refuses to say anything until his lawyer arrives. Honestly, with the heavy amount of evidence convicting this piece of shit, it'll be a miracle if any attorney would want to defend his sorry ass.
"I see. Okay, Chief. I should be at the station with the evidence as soon as possible."
Good. Alright, good. I'll happily see you there.
With that, the call ended. Maria took another look in the window of the room that contained the small penguin. "I promise you guys, that asshat is going to get what's coming to him. And soon," Maria whispered. Maria then adjusted the coat that she was wearing and soon made her way out of the hospital as fast as she could. Upon arriving at the station, Maria gathered up the recorder, the files, and the notes that she had taken during the interview with Austin. She then made her way into the entrance of the station and looked around a bit. Then, her phone dinged. She quickly grabbed her phone and checked it. It was a text message. "Hey, me and the other officers in the interrogation room to the left of my office. Probably should have told you that over the phone. Just make sure to get in here as soon as you can. You're gonna love every ounce of this." Placing the phone back into its holster, she quickly made her way towards the interrogation room that was listed on the text message. As she walked, she could only think of what Austin had told her to do before she left the room. "When you see him, make his life a living hell." The words continued to echo throughout her head with each step she took. The words finally died down when she made her way into the interrogation room. "Ah, Detective Maria, thank you for coming," Ezekiel said with a smirk on his face. "No problem, Chief," Maria said. Maria looked down at the table and saw Alex sitting next to it in a wheelchair, an oxygen tube coming out from his deformed nose, and down into an oxygen tank near the wheelchair. Next to his chair was an IV bag, and holder that was connected to his fat, greasy wrist. Painkillers, no doubt. Alex just stared at Maria with a sadistic smile on his face, his rotten teeth giving off a foul odor that nearly caused everyone in the room to puke from the stench. "Fucking hell, man, do you brush?" Ezekiel said, holding his nose in disgust. "No, at least not for people like you," Alex said, letting out a loud belch in response. "You do know why you're here, right?" Maria asked. "I ain't saying shit until my lawyer arrives," Alex grunted. "That might be a while, Alex, or how I should probably call you, Pigman," Maria said with disdain. "Is that what those little faggots called me? Ha! I love it!" Alex called out with joy. "You better shut your goddamn mouth up, you fucking cocksucker!" Ezekiel snapped. "Or what? You can't do or say shit to me. As far as I'm concerned, I can ramble on as much as I fucking want," Alex spat. "You know, Alex, you're one ugly son of a bitch. Yeah, that's the reason why you go after little boys. 'Cause no sane person would ever want to touch your sorry ass," Maria sneered. Alex just laughed hard in response. He didn't stop laughing until a loud knocking sound came from the door. Maria walked over towards it and opened it up. Once she did, a male ferret dressed in a fancy suit and tie walked in carrying a briefcase in his paws. "I see you're his lawyer," Ezekiel asked. "Yes, I am. Name's John C. Curtis, and I'm here to represent my client," John said formally as he sat down next to Alex. "Have they asked you any questions yet?" John asked Alex. "No, just some petty insults and shit," Alex said, grinning. "I see," John said as he pulled out a black curved box and pulling out a pair of black spectacles and placing them on his face. "Enough with the chit-chat," Maria began. "Let's get this show on the road." "Fine by me," Alex groaned. Ezekiel then walked over towards Maria and then whispered something in his ear. Maria nodded after he had finished what he had to say, and with that Ezekiel walked out the interrogation room. "Wait a second, where the hell is he going?" John said, standing up. "He's going to get a few things so we can start this interrogation up. Just sit down," Maria ordered. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. Not a single word or sound indicated that Ezekiel was coming back from the room. John just tapped away on the desk with a pencil while Alex continued to stare at Maria with a wide, perverted grin on his face. "Oh my God, is he coming or what?" John called out. "He should be here any minute now," Maria answered. "It's been 15 minutes already and nothing's happened yet. My client is sitting here most likely in extreme pain. He needs to go back to the hospital where he belongs. If your boss isn't back in the next 2 minutes, this interview is over," John threatened. "Dude, calm your fucking tits. I'm not in any kind of pain right now. In fact, I can't wait to see what kind of evidence that asshole has," Alex said. "Alex, with all due sincerity, could you please shut up?" John said calmly. "I can say whatever the fuck I want," Alex spat. Just as the conversation was about to get heated, the door to the interrogation room opened up slowly. Everyone looked at the doorway to see Captain Ezekiel walk in, with many files and even a camcorder in his hands. "So, Alex, you ready for your ass to get handed to you on a silver platter?" Ezekiel said with a smirk. "You wish, you fucking cunt," Alex muttered under his breath. Ezekiel then placed the rest of the files on the desk, and then just stared at Alex with a giant grin on his face. "What's that?" Alex asked. "Oh, nothing much. Just your criminal record, the tapes and camera footage of dozens of children, and DNA samples from your little jerky shit at your cabin," Ezekiel said. Alex's eyes widened as the captain started to flip through one of the manila envelopes and pull out a series of photos and other objects and place them next to him. One of the photos was of Tyrone, another of Uniqua, and the final one of Tasha. "So, you know who these kids are?" Ezekiel asked. "No, I don't," Alex lied. "Bullshit," Maria yelled. "These kids were the last ones you kidnapped, tortured, and killed back at that cabin, you sick motherfucker. And what proof do you have against my client? John asked. Well, according to DNA evidence done by a forensic team, we found traces of their blood all over the cabin, not to mention their fingerprints all over the little devices that he used to torture them with as well, Ezekiel said. My question to you, Alex, is this. Why did you do it? Why did you murder those kids? What the fuck did they ever do to you? I don't have to fucking answer you, bitch, Alex growled. That's fine, Alex. We'll just let all the evidence speak for you. Let's see here, Ezekiel said, flipping through multiple files and laying out multiple photos. Let's see, the jerky that you made was tested, and through DNA analysis, it was found to be made of the bodies of various children, not just the ones that you kidnapped, either. Ezekiel then placed another picture down, this time of the rotting corpses that had been found at the scene of the crime. Bodies of multiple children were found underneath their cabin through, the floorboards, most of them showing signs of blunt force trauma to the head, and various other incidents and other injuries caused by other, artificial means. Maria then placed down the files that contained both Austin and Pablo's rape kit. Not to mention the rape kit that was performed on both Austin and Pablo that found seminal fluid that, not to mention, some of it was still alive as well, too. We also have footage of your little homemade snuff kitty porn that was boxed away in your room, including an almost 4-hour-long video of you raping Austin over and over and over again, Ezekiel growled. More and more pages of evidence, photos, and screenshots from the homemade videos that had been in the tapes were shown. Honestly, Alex, we could go on and on and on with this. And all these folders, pictures, and video footage that we have, that's only the tip of the iceberg. We also have your records of your past child fiddling days, too. There's honestly nothing that you can say or do at this point, Alex. You're fucked, and you know it! Maria said with a grin on her face. Alex's attorney, John, took a close look at some of the evidence before him and sighed. Fine. What's your plea deal? John asked. Fuck that! He isn't getting a plea deal. In fact, he'll be lucky if he gets life in prison for the shit he's done, Ezekiel spat. Fine then. Do you have anything else you want to accuse my client of? John asked. As of right now, no. We're going to wait for all that in court, Ezekiel said. Fine. I guess we'll see you both in court soon, John said, packing up his suitcase. Oh, you bet your fucking ass we'll see you there. And by the way, there's going to be a special little place in hell for you for defending this bastard, Maria swore. With that, John packed up the rest of his things into a suitcase and began to wheel Alex out of the interrogation room. Once the two of them were out, Maria and Ezekiel both high-fived each other. This case is going to be done and over with soon. Once a jury takes one look at the evidence, they're going to have his ass roasted in the electric chair, Ezekiel said joyfully. One question, though. Will Austin and Pablo have to testify? Maria asked. Well, you do have the recordings, so it's not very likely that they will have to, but just in case, let's have them ready to do such, if the judge orders them to do so, Ezekiel said. Will do. When's the trial supposed to start? Maria asked. Tomorrow. All the evidence has been turned in, and in this case, it's already ready to go to court, Ezekiel said. Now, I need you to go and get yourself some rest. I'll go tell Pablo's mother about the case coming up. Thank you, Maria said. No problem. We're gonna get this asshole down. We're gonna have him put down like the fucking animal he is, Ezekiel said. After that, Maria then made her way out of the station and back into her car. The sun had already begun setting by that time. She had already gotten into it. As she drove off to her home, she braced herself for what was about to come for the next day. The case to end this entire ounce of insanity. The very next day, Maria readied herself mentally and physically for the case that was to come. Before the trial started, she made her way to the hospital and made sure to talk with both Austin and Pablo about what was to come of the court case, and to ready themselves if they were to be called up to the stand. Two of them were nervous, but determined to have Alex put away for life, at least for Pablo, that is. Austin, however, wanted nothing else more than to see that pigman fry slowly and painfully in the electric chair. After the talk, Maria then made her way to the courthouse, with Elizabeth following behind her and the two boys. Once they arrived, Maria directed the three of them to go and sit in one of the courthouse pews and wait for the case to start. "The case should be starting in a few minutes. You three just stay comfortable until then, okay?" Maria said in a soft voice. "Okay," Austin and Pablo both said in unison. Maria smiled and ruffled the fur and feathers on top of the boy's head to encourage them before walking out of the courtroom. Maria then stood near the entrance doors, waiting for the captain to arrive so that she could be given further instructions on what was needed to be done. Almost in an instant, Ezekiel came walking into the main doors of the courthouse and walked up towards Maria with a smile on his face. "Detective Maria," Ezekiel said. "Welcome, Captain. Well, today's a day." "Yes, it is. Now here's what I need you to do. I need you to just simply sit down next to Austin and Pablo throughout the whole trial today. I've already handed over the evidence to the prosecutor already." "Who is going to be the prosecutor?" Maria asked. "One of the best ones in town. Emily F. Tanner," Ezekiel answered. "I've heard about her, actually. She's apparently hasn't lost a single case in her time as a lawyer, and especially not whenever she was a prosecutor, too," Maria said, scratching her chin. "Yep, she's one in a million, especially if it involves cases that involve children." "What about the judge?" Maria asked. "We don't need another corrupt one ruining this case." "Don't you worry about that, Detective," Ezekiel began. "Judge Damien is a judge that is dedicated to his job, and he takes no shit from anybody, especially child predators." "That's good," Maria said. "All right, let's get ourselves in there. The case is going to begin in a few minutes," Ezekiel said, opening the door and walking to the courtroom. Minutes passed, and the courtroom was surprisingly full to the brim with people. Apparently, a heavy amount of people in the town wanted to see the same thing that Austin and Pablo wanted: justice. One by one, the jurors then all assumed their seats in the jury place. Then once Alex and his lawyer had finally arrived into the courtroom and assumed their spots on the defendant's side, the judge walked out of his office, clad in black robe, and in his hand a solid oak cane. "Case number 1708, People v. Alex Burns. All rise for the Honorable Coroner, Judge Damien presiding," the court bailiff called out. Everyone in the courtroom, with the exception of Alex, rose up for the judge, who, due to his age, had a bit of a hard time getting up the stairs into his seat. However, he managed to get there with a little bit of help from the bailiff. Curse this godforsaken arthritis. Anyway, you all may be seated," Judge Damien called out. Everyone sat down in an instant. "Okay, let's see here," Judge Damien said, pulling out his glasses and putting them on his face. "What are the charges?" "Murder in the first degree, sexual assault of a minor, cannibalism, assault and battery, illegal use of a weapon, rape of a minor, assault on a police officer, attempted murder, kidnapping, attempted kidnapping, premeditated murder, endangering the welfare of a child, and a few other charges as well," the prosecutor, Emily, read out. "Good Lord, that's a lot of charges. How does the defendant plead?" "Not guilty by reason of insanity," John called out. "How much on bail?" "Reprimand, Your Honor. This man is a flight risk and a wanted sex offender. He's too much of a danger to society to be given bail of any sort," Emily said. "Your Honor, my client here is paralyzed from the waist down due to a gunshot wound. I highly doubt he'll be able to even get out of a room, much less try and get on a plane," John said. "That may be true, Mr. John, but given the risk, I'll decide with Miss Emily over there. Now that all this is out of the way, let's start with the opening statements. Miss Emily, you start first," Judge Damien responded. "Thank you, Your Honor," Emily said before getting up from the seat and making her way towards the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'd like to thank you all for taking your time to come to be a part of this case on your spare time. With that, I'll try and keep this as brief as I can. This case you are about to witness today is involving the man over there, Alex J. Burns. That man is currently under arrest for the torture, mutilation, and rape of numerous children in the area, as you will see in the evidence presented to you in a little while. I honestly hope and pray that you take the time to observe the evidence and make a proper judgment. Thank you again. With that, Emily walked back to her seat with no other words being said. Well, you were right about one thing, Miss Emily. That was certainly short. Now, Mr. J, your opening statement, too? Josh immediately stood up and without hesitation began his statement. Like Miss Emily said before, I welcome you all. Nah, I'm not the one for formalities, so I'll just cut to the case. The prosecution would like you to believe that my client over there is a sadistic monster, hell-bent on the murder of young children and the like. But I do wish to tell you all that my client is nothing like such. He is, however, mentally unstable in many forms. To wrap this up, I hope that you all make the proper decision, and instead of jailing him or killing him off, you give him the help that he needs at a local psych ward. Thank you again. Like with Emily, Josh made his way down towards his desk and sat down upon it. Well, another short statement. If anything, this case should be over by the end of the day, if all things go smoothly, the judge stated. Okay, prosecutor, you may start first. Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to start this case off with providing evidence numbers 625 and 780. Emily then pulled out a large evidence bag that contained every single tape that had been found inside of the cabin bedroom, as well as the recording device that Maria had used to record the interviews of both Pablo and Austin. She then grabbed them and placed them onto the judge's desk. My lord, that's a lot of tapes, the judge said, puzzled. Yes, Your Honor, and with your permission, I'd like to play them for the jury, Emily said. Does the defense have any objections to this motion? The judge asked. No, Your Honor, the defense attorney responded. Well then, motion granted, the judge said. One more thing, Your Honor. These tapes and recordings are rather graphic, to say the least. I would also like to ask that the courtroom be cleared in order to spare everyone else from the dramatic sights that will be played out, with the exception of the defendant and the lawyer and everyone else, Emily said. Given the nature of the crimes and accusations, I'll allow it. I hereby order the courtroom to be cleared out until further notice. However, this is not a recess, so you may not leave the courthouse unless I give the order. The judge then slammed the gavel down at least 4 times before everyone, including Pablo and Austin, made their way out of the courtroom in droves. Once everybody was out, the doors of the courtroom were shut and locked from the inside, as to keep away any kind of prying eyes. While this was going on, both Pablo and Austin looked at each other in confusion and then turned their heads towards Detective Maria. What's going on? Austin asked. The jury's going to listen to the evidence. They're gonna... Oh boy, it's not gonna be pretty for them, Maria answered. Why? What's on the tapes? Pablo asked. It's probably best that you don't know, Pablo. It's probably best not to. Do either of you want a drink or anything? I think we're good. Yeah, we're good, Pablo said. Alright, well, I guess we can just wait for the time being. Despite the doors being closed, almost everyone could hear the gasp of the jury members. Maria herself knew that they'd be doing a lot more than gasping once they watched the tapes. During the course of a few hours, the jury, judge, and plaintiff and defendant all watched every single tape and listened to the recordings as well. The jury members, by the end of it all, were either shaking violently, gagging, and/or vomiting in the process. The judge just held his head in his hands in disgust. Hell, even Alex's attorney looked with disdain at his client for the disgusting shit that he had done to all those children. Seeing as how everyone in the courtroom was deeply traumatized, the judge immediately ordered a 30-minute recess to be held. Once it was ordered, the majority of the jury ran out of the courtroom and into the restrooms to puke. Others just sat in their seats, completely and utterly traumatized by what they had seen. The rest just walked out of the courtroom in disgust. After a quick break, everyone was soon back in the courtroom, ready to get this entire thing over with. "All rise!" the courtroom bailiff called out once again. Judge Damien walked out of his office, brandishing a sickening look on his face, no doubt having been caused by the tapes and audio recordings. "Okay, I think we're all ready to continue with this case." Judge Damien looked over to the defendant's table and noticed that the defendant's lawyer was nowhere in sight. "Mr. Burns, what the hell happened to your lawyer?" Judge Damien demanded. "He quit," Alex said flatly. "Called me a sick son of a bitch and a sick fuck, and he hoped I burned in hell in the process. Well, as much as I want to see nothing else more than you to get fucked over entirely, looks like I'm gonna have to get you another lawyer, aren't I?" the judge said begrudgingly. "Don't bother, Your Honor. I'll defend myself," Alex said. "Fine. Whatever. I'll allow it. Defense, call up your first witness," the judge said. "Gladly, Your Honor. Defense calls Pablo to the stand," Alex said, all too joyfully. There was a slight gasp amongst the crowd of people, which normally would have had the judge slamming his gavel down to quiet the people, but this time he did nothing. Pablo froze in his seat, grasping Austin's hand slightly. He looked over at Maria, who had already begun to get up from her seat. "Your Honor, call him up," Alex called out. "You shut the fuck up! I'll allow the witness to take the time that he needs to come up as he pleases," the judge snapped. Do I really need to go up there?" Pablo whimpered, his body shaking with fear. "I'm afraid so, Pablo. But don't worry, I'll be here to help you out," Maria whispered back. With much hesitation, Pablo got up from his seat and walked down the aisle, his flipper grasped tightly in Maria's paw. Everyone in the jury looked at the young avian, their faces showing a look of sorrow and pity. Maria then helped Pablo up to the chair and sat him down, as the court bailiff walked up towards Pablo. "Raise your right flipper," the officer demanded, to which Pablo obeyed. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" Yes, sir," Pablo responded back. Once that was done, Alex wheeled himself over towards the young avian, a big perverted grin on his face. He had every single plan to make sure he broke Pablo. He was going to sit there and say literally everything that he could. He himself didn't particularly care too much if he was let off the hook or not. If anything, he wouldn't really have cared either way. But the one thing he wanted to make sure that he did before he was either executed or attacked or whatever the hell it was going to be given to him was that he destroy the mind of that little penguin. He had already dealt with Austin already, screwing his mind up all to the point of no return. So, of course, with Pablo, he wanted to make sure he did the same thing. And of course, with that, he had many plans already stuck in his head on what he was going to say and what he was going to do. Pablo, at this point, however, already wanted to vomit his guts out just looking at the man. The judge noticed this and glared down at the pigman and growled, "You so much as threaten him or even look at him the wrong way, so help me God, I'll have you held in the contempt of court. You got that?" "Yes, Your Honor," Alex said flatly. "So, Pablo, during the interview that you had with Detective Maria here, you said that I tied you down to a chair by your flippers. Am I correct?" Alex asked. "Yes," Pablo said, shaking. "May I ask of you, Pablo, do you by any chance, did you see anything?" No, Pablo said. "So how is it that you were able to see what I supposedly did to your friend Tasha and Uniqua?" Alex asked again. I don't know," Pablo muttered. "Need I remind you, Pablo, that you are under oath, and that lying on the stand could get you in jail for a long time?" Pablo continued to shake. He felt like he was going to pass out from fear. "Answer the question, Pablo!" Alex said firmly. I know," Pablo said, tears forming in his eyes. "So answer the question. How were you able to see me attacking your little friends?" Alex yelled. They were the light in the kitchen," Pablo answered. "Another question. You said that I raped you. How exactly could that even be possible since I am a big guy?" Alex boasted. "Objection!" the prosecutor called out. "Or are you gonna use that excuse to cover up the fact that you're a little faggot?" Alex spat. "Objection!" The prosecutor yelled. "Sustained. Alex, you better ask some real fucking questions before I beat you with my fucking gavel!" the judge yelled. "Yes, Your Honor. One last question, Pablo. What did I do to you? In your own words, tell everyone in the court what I did to you." "Why?" Pablo said. "In order to prove that you aren't just making this stuff up. I'm quite sure everybody, including the jury, would love to hear your side of the story. Now spit it. What did I do to you?" Pablo started to shake violently, his stomach twisting into knots and a river of tears flowing down his face. He was just about ready to give up right then and there and just completely and utterly pass out, when all of a sudden, 3 voices called out to him. He opened up his tear-stained eyes and saw them. His friends, Tasha, Uniqua, and Tyrone, sitting right next to him. Their bodies emitted a pure white light, and their usual clothing was now a long, pure white robe. Everything in the courtroom seemed to have slowed down to a snail pace in the process. "Hey, Pablo," Tyrone said, smiling. "Tyrone, is that you?" Pablo asked. "Yeah, buddy, it's me," Tyrone said. "Hey, don't forget about us," Tasha and Uniqua said in unison. "Guys, it is you. What are you doing here?" Pablo asked. "We're here to help you out, Pablo," Tyrone said. "Really?" Pablo said. "You bet, Pablo," Tasha said. What do I need to do?" Pablo whimpered. "You need to let go of your fear and stand up to that pigman. Tell everyone in the court everything that he did to you and us. I promise you, Pablo, once you do that, Alex will have nothing to use against you. You'll ultimately defeat him and he'll give up entirely. In that instance, when he sees that he has no more power over you, he's gonna shrivel up and give up entirely. He's not even going to continue with this," Tasha said. "And don't worry, we'll be right by your side the whole time. You just speak now, and we'll all get rid of that fear for you," Uniqua said. Thank you, guys. I love you all," Pablo whimpered once more. "We love you too, Pablo. Now let's get you back into that courtroom," Tyrone said. "I'm not gonna ask you again! Answer the question!" Alex screamed. Pablo immediately broke out of his trance and lifted his head up to meet the pigman's snarling gaze. All ounces of fear and dread that had once been present in him were now all gone, replacing it with a sense of confidence, hope, and fearlessness. Pablo gazed at the pigman once more and smirked. "Fine. I'll answer," Pablo began. Alex's face soon dropped from the sadistic grin to a look of fear. "You drugged the marshmallows that were in my cooler. You dragged all of us into your disgusting cabin. Then you killed my friends, and then you raped me," Pablo screamed. Alex took a step back. I was supposed to break him. What the fuck is going on? Alex screamed in his head. Then you raped my boyfriend, Austin, and then you had the audacity to try and kidnap me again? Well, guess what, you fucking piece of shit? You're done with. It's over now. I'm not gonna let you in my head anymore. No more crying, no more fear. I'm gonna make sure of it that you beg me to spare your life by the time I'm done with you. Pablo stared down at Alex. Alex's heart dropped down to his stomach like a rock in water. His face now bore a defeated and destroyed look. Normally, he wouldn't have allowed something like that to get to him. But of course, seeing Pablo's demeanor turn entirely from being fearful to now having the upper hand, he knew he had nothing. He could do nothing. He didn't say anything. He just wheeled himself back to his desk and said, I'm changing my plea. I plead guilty, Your Honor. There was a hushed murmuring in the crowd, which caused the judge to swing his gavel on the table to get everyone to shut up. I see. Well, I accept your plea. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I thank you for your time here. You'll be compensated greatly for your work done today, Judge Damien said with a smile. As for you, Mr. Burns, are you ready for your sentencing? The judge asked. Yeah, Alex said, defeated. Pablo and Austin, I wish to ask you two to come to the bench, Judge Damien said. Without hesitation, both Pablo and Austin made their way towards the judge, the bailiff helping the two of them up on the steps. Austin, Pablo, the judge began, on behalf of this courtroom, I wish to commend the two of you for being so brave and telling your account. Not just doing this here today, but also coming forward. Austin, you may not have been able to say much of anything during this trial, but your testimony on that recorder, as well as your cooperation, helped bring the disgusting man to justice. More than that, you even willingly sacrificed your own self just to save your best friend. You, my dear kangaroo, are a hero and a true friend. Pablo, in all my years of being a judge, you are the first one that I've actually seen stand up towards their attacker face to face. Not many children are even able or even desire to do that kind of thing. Usually they're too afraid to do such, but you have proven yourself to be different than them. Yet, you also conquered your fears and showed that man that you are stronger than he is. And now that he's seen that you won't allow him to control you anymore, he's given up. You two are true heroes, which is why I want to ask you two a quick question. Do you want me to sentence this man to death, or give him life in prison? Austin and Pablo both looked at each other and nodded. Kill him, the two said in unison. Alex's eyes widened in fear as he began to thrash around in his wheelchair. As you wish. Alex J. Burns, by the power vested in me by the state, I hereby sentence you to death by the electric chair. Your death will be carried out tomorrow at 6 p.m. This court is adjourned, the judge said as he slammed the hammer down on the table, sealing Alex's fate. Alex just sat there in his wheelchair, unmoving, as the bailiff took him away. The sound of applause and cheers from the people in the courtroom rang out like an orchestra. Even the judge himself applauded. Once both Pablo and Austin were taken down from the judge's seat, the two of them embraced each other in celebration of the event. Justice was served that day, and Alex, in less than 24 hours, will forever be confined to the depths of hell for all eternity, to be torn apart and raped repeatedly by demons until Judgment Day. The next day went by as quickly as anticipated. Alex was taken out of his disgustingly dirty cell. He was dressed in a prison jumpsuit and was chained from head to toe with handcuffs and collars. Now, he knew what it felt like when he did that to the children he tortured and killed. As he continued to walk towards the execution room, Both Detective Maria and Captain Ezekiel walked next to him and glared at him, with huge grins on their faces. "How's it feel to be chained up like an animal, you fucking piece of shit?" Maria geared. "I bet you like that, you son of a bitch. Just like all the children you messed with," Ezekiel spat. Upon arrival at the execution room, Alex was strapped down into the chair and braced himself for his final moments on Earth. That is until the door opened up, and Pablo and Austin walked in. "What the fuck are they doing here?" Alex screamed. "We're here to do something that we've wanted to do. Take your life, like you did to our friends," Austin said coldly. Pablo just smirked once again at the pigman in front of him. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Just the petrified look on Alex's face was enough to satisfy him. In unison, the two placed one arm and flipper onto the switch and pulled it down hard. The shockwave of electricity coursed through the body of the pigman, causing his entire body to shoot up and stiffen. Smoke started coming out from his pores. Foam came out from the pig's mouth as his eyes burst in their sockets, sending rivers of juice and blood pouring down his face. This continued on for a good 15 whole minutes until Alex and Pablo pulled the switch up, turning the machine off. The pigman's body was almost charred black from the heavy amount of electricity that coursed throughout his body. After further checking, he was definitely dead. But before his body was taken, Austin and Pablo walked up to the corpse and spat on it. And then, after that, the body was taken out of the room and then dumped into a large dirt hole in the ground and quickly buried. And with that, his soul immediately plummeted into the deepest, darkest pits of hell. It was the end of Alex. The end of the torture. The end of the murder, of the cannibalism, of everything else. It was the end of the pigman entirely. In the months following after the death of Alex, both Pablo and Austin had started up a brand new life with each other. Elizabeth had finally managed to secure the adoption papers, and thus, Austin was now a member of the family. It was a little bit awkward between both Pablo and Austin themselves, especially with the fact that the two of them were dating, but they later got over it. They weren't blood-related anyway, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Pablo's mother, of course, obviously supported their relationship. The funerals that were ultimately held for all the other Backyardigans came and went as it did. Tears were shed, eulogies were said, but ultimately the memory of them would definitely never die, especially with Austin and Pablo. Of course, with everything that had happened, Pablo's mother made sure of it to install bars on all the windows in the house. And of course, anytime they wanted to go outside and do their little adventures, Elizabeth herself would have to go out and watch to make sure of it that nothing happened. It took a long while before they could finally be let outside by themselves, but ultimately they were able to. Of course, since there was only two of them, there really wasn't too much to really be, said about the Backyardigans. But thankfully, in the time that they had gone back to school after summer break, they made a few new friends. They were new, but they wanted to join in on some of the fun and adventures that they had. And thus, the Backyardigans were reformed again. This time, so much better. Of course, one thing's definitely for sure. Playtime definitely wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Hello there, my little shadows. It's me again, your master, the Shadow Reader. I hope you all enjoyed this little tale of horror. I honestly hope I didn't traumatize you too much after this. If you're new here and want to become one of my little shadows, then hit that subscribe button down below, and also make sure to turn on post notifications so that you can be the first to watch my brand new content when it comes out. Until then, sweet dreams, my little shadows.